This is the Fallbrook Regional Health District Facilities Committee meeting Wednesday, April 17th, 2024 at 10 a.m. I call the meeting to order and ask for a roll call.
Director Jeffries?
Present.
Director Moran?
Present.
Thank you.
Do we have any public comments?
We always only point to Roy. We have nothing, we have no one else on Zoom and we didn't receive anything via email, so I don't believe so.
All right, we'll move to item 3, discussion items, ongoing completed projects in the Community Health and Wellness Center. And we'll start with the review of the RFPs from 3 architectural firms. I will offer some observations about those.
Sure.
Is that appropriate?
Yeah, and then I will also let you know, I've reached out and had Zoom follow-up calls with 2 out of the 3, the 2 with the most reasonable pricing
Thank you.
structures.
Okay.
So,
Well, I was impressed by both of them in terms of their prior experience. They certainly have had experience that would be applicable to us. I think the DKY, is that what? They let us know much more deeply about the people that work with them and all of that, and gave us their org chart, which is fine. I'm sure the Encinitas group has a similar DNA, and you've spoken to them. They are licensed, that's the bottom line.
oh, yes.
And of course, Nalu thinks we're the Museum of Modern Art, coming in double over the other 2 responses, so not. They totally overbuilt their presentation in my mind.
Yes.
Kind of was scary that we would come out with something that belonged in, somewhere else, not here.
Yeah,
However, to consider that we went from strategic planning 8 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, somewhere in there, to now having live proposals is a very good sign for the Health and Wellness Center. So I would ask you, Rachel, did you discover anything that would help us discern between the Encinitas group and DKY? One is coming in at 53,000 plus about 18,000 in if we need it. And the other is DKY is coming in at 63,000 plus 14,000 if we need it.
right.
So
They're fairly comparable.
tell us what your gut is going on.
So I did Zoom calls with both of the principals for each group. I'll start with DKY. It is a small shop that is in the process of merging with another shop. That to me is always a little bit red flag
Yep.
because it's easy to get lost in that shuffle. I will tell you that I had our free consultant who's in the construction world.
Oh,
Look at these.
good.
Side by side to make sure that there's no apples, oranges challenges. So I met with DKY, just the individual, very competent, plenty of skills, lots of history, not a great just verbal connection. So some of my follow-up questions were, what is their communication pattern like? What do they need? Are they strict email? Are they only on the phone? Like, how do you work, right? Little more old school, which is not really a problem, but it slows things down. So my follow-up question to that is generally, what's your response to the request for informations or submittals? Once the GC, the general contractor, is brought in, if they have a question, they send it to the architect. Am I waiting a week? Am I waiting a day? Like, what's your response time? Because that slows down every part of the process, right? So they were talking their responses usually within a week. Well, that's reasonable. It's actually reasonable, but it's, fine, whatever. Fine. Then I had a follow-up phone call with the Encinitas Design Group, and both of the principals, Todd Coleman and Warren Scott, both were on the call. All of their information about who they are, basically their CVs and a lot of the information about them, it's all on their website. So they didn't resubmit it. Very concise in their proposal, but fully complete, and they spelled out the potentials.
They did.
So that was definitely appreciated. Really got along with these guys. really got a sense that they are used to medium to small projects. We would definitely be in that zone. They've done plenty of municipal, they've done plenty of commercial.
Yeah.
They've done a lot of hospitality food service type programs, so while I explained, we're not necessarily talking about a commercial kitchen the way that a commercial kitchen would be used, where you're having people come in, rent the kitchen, sell food out of it, blah, 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 that we're really talking about this being a demonstration kitchen, right? And they already have experience with a senior community that is using their kitchen as more demonstration, but had a different. Anyway, we had a very long conversation about the uses, and I got a sense that they actually heard what we were talking about. Really got along well with them, because the two of them work in tandem as well as having a team. Their responses for the communication pattern is, well, we generally try to use what the client is most comfortable with. Which I really appreciated that statement, which meant if I need phone calls, they're gonna be phone calls. If I need to do everything via email, they're gonna do everything via email. They do talk about the fact that usually they will follow up a verbal conversation with an email so that we have the paper documentation. They said they've had best experience with that when you're dealing with municipal style projects. So the fact that they understood that process was encouraging to me. The other part that was encouraging was when I asked about the RFIs and submittals, they said, well, usually we can do that within 2 days or so. That's, usually fast. Again, appreciate that ability to be in concert with the construction. The fact that they came in at the lower price also made me happy.
Yep.
So my overall comfort and recommendation really ended up with the Encinitas Design Group. Felt most comfortable with what they submitted to us, their pricing at the gate. I didn't have to come back to them for any follow-up questions. Originally, I had to go back to DKNY and actually ask for a price estimate. They didn't include it in the initial.
Really?
To be determined.
Which I thought odd.
Odd.
There was just a few typos in their template, which they referred to this project as improvements to the comfort suites. Obviously, it was a template that just didn't get, but I mean, if I'm gonna get nitty gritty, that's kind of the whole point. Anyway, I overall had a better feel, better conversation, with the Encinitas Design Group. So I would hope that we could work with that vendor on this, knowing that both groups are equal as far as skills and
Background,
everything.
experience.
Right.
And they offered us some peeks into their prior works, and that was good.
Yeah.
What are you thinking, Barb?
I'm thinking that the communication is of utmost importance, and to be able to have that open dialogue and be willing to work with you on timelines and your degree of comfort. They seem to have all their ducks in a row, and the fact that they're cost effective in the pricing category. If you're comfortable with them, which it appears that you are, I would say make the recommendation to move forward to consider it.
So would you be comfortable if we forwarded to our board colleague that we recommend the Encinitas?
I would.
Okay.
Because
Perfect.
if there's no communication, except
Right.
you having to have that personal relationship with them, which sounds like it's already being well established, it's gonna take us a long way.
Yeah.
And I think that if there was something that was needing immediate attention, I think that they would respond promptly to resolve whatever the matter is.
That was the feeling that I had from them. They did come out and had done a job site walk prior when the RFP was open. We offered it to any and all,
And they're
right?
the only ones that did a site.
No, we haven't, Nalu actually came out and did the site visit as well. Obviously, their pricing came in really high, double, basically.
Double.
Dreams.
Yeah, well, and I think there's an experience difference there. The Nalu firm was started in 2017. Encinitas Design Group, both of them, definitely more years of experience there. So
Did DKY do a site visit?
I don't know if they came out or not. I have a feeling they didn't. I couldn't quite, the site visit happened when I was out of town. So I didn't see communication from them that they came out, but they may have,
Okay.
but I
But we know for
absolutely
sure
know the
it's-
other two did.
Yeah. Okay, so do we need a formal motion to forward this to our board colleagues? Probably it'd be a good
It's
idea.
probably just a good idea to have that you're making a formal recommendation.
Okay, shall I move and you
I'll
want to?
second.
Okay, I move forwarding the proposal from Encinitas Design, to the board in May.
Yeah,
And you're,
Already.
you're seconding that? my friend?
Absolutely.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
perfect.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
And we have a site logic update. Tell us all about it.
Site logic update, again, we're doing, bi-weekly just update meetings with our project manager for site logic, which is Greg Olson. He meets with Teresa and I on that. Essentially what they're looking at right now is that by mid-May, they should be through 50% of their design process, which is when their design team starts to put in for some of the permitting, right? And basically, they'll bring that design back to us. I mean, we're not talking architectural design,
Right.
it's definitely engineering design.
Yeah.
But basically just the first initial set of schematics and such. So the expectation is if they're able to kind of get that mid-May target, and we don't suddenly go, oh, no, we need these to be at the other end of the property, which I don't imagine us doing since we've looked at this many times. The goal then would be to be able to work through the county, work through all the pieces that they have to do, so that we could probably start some level of construction by late July. That's the timeline they're giving us. Now, obviously, that could move to August or September, depending how full permitting and such goes. But that's the update on them. Working with them has continued to be easy.
Good.
Updates are ready. I had one call from can't remember what the company is, but it was basically, somebody checking in on the subs to make sure that certain equipment had actually been done. I didn't have to worry about taking the call. They had called me and I said, you need to talk to our project manager. Gave it to Greg. Greg handled it immediately and then followed up with an email of like, spoke with, this was the consensus. So again, the communication is really exceptional.
Good.
And I appreciate that. Working with our general manager on the project so far is really good.
Wonderful. Well, mid to late July is kind of exciting. We'll see.
It's kind of exciting to think that that could be when we actually start. They've given us a project timeline. We'll see, obviously, changes to that as we get through more design, through more improvement. They'll update that and those dates will get more solid. That's obviously incredibly important to our wellness center team. Because remember, we will be expected that we will close down for those 4 weeks. That the bulk of the construction, the full trenching and putting in the electrical infrastructure, when all of that is going on, we're gonna close down the center so that we have less risk, right? We'll move Katya to this building and we'll move Palomar Counseling to this building. We'll move DPP to this building. So we'll organize, this room will be busy. Conference room upstairs will be busy, but we'll find ways to make that happen. Teresa and Patty will stay on site. Primarily, I mean, they can do most of their work remotely. Patty will still be responsible for making sure the rest of the buildings are in good repair. And then, the food pantry has their garden area that they're gonna be in class with. So we may have a small area that's open for the public. Most of those classes they're talking about being the weekend, so we don't have to worry about active construction. So we'll talk about fencing and such for that. Because then people can skirt by the construction park in that lower area, just deal with the garden and not have to worry about the buildings.
Well, I like the planning that's going on. It's not unusual for a center to have a summer hiatus of 4 weeks or
Right.
fall, but fill me in. So those beautiful raised beds down by the
Over by the house.
house.
Yes,
That's the food pantry
yes,
effort. Boy, they're busy bees. I was watching them make those things. They're beautiful. They're done.
yeah. Yeah, they're doing a nice job. It has taken them a lot longer because obviously we had a lot of rain.
Yeah,
Most of it is volunteer work, so volunteers and rain don't always work together. So it's taken a little bit longer, but they're moving a little bit faster now. And they've actually just advertised for those gardening classes, so.
wonderful. Okay. Any questions on Site Logic, Barbara?
I just continue to move forward. I think we're making good progress as long as the communication is there and
Yeah.
we're responding. We're on a roll.
Roll it.
Keep rolling it
Keep
forward.
rolling it.
Right.
And now, everybody's favorite, ADA accessible ramps, building A and B and parking lot to lower field.
Right, so those ramps, were being designed by Karn Engineering. Scott did get me the final plans. However, I'm holding until after we discuss with, the Encinitas Design Group. I wanna make sure that putting those ramps in don't hinder any of the potential, renovations to the building A kitchen area. Because if they do need to access through that side area, I don't want anybody running over our brand new ramps.
Right, right. Yeah.
The engineering will hold, we don't have to worry about that, we already have the plans.
It has a shelf life.
It's got a shelf life. So,
Oh, that's smart.
my other thought had been, we could do the concrete work from the lower area that leads into that lower field down to the, gazebo structure. The challenge is by splitting that up, we're gonna be paying to have, concrete pump trucks come out twice.
That's the cost. of doing
Concrete's gonna be
business sometimes.
expensive no matter what.
Yeah.
Right, so part of me is thinking maybe wait and join them all together
Mhm.
and or go ahead and get that part done. So anyways, I was gonna talk with, EDC,
Mhm.
presuming we had gone with them. I'll talk to them and say, hey, here's the designs, here's what we're looking at. How do you think this impacts you? We've already had that conversation with Site Logic. They didn't see any concern with what they're doing and those ramps. If EDC comes back and says, no, we're not, you wouldn't access from there, you'd really do the access from this side.
Right.
Or if they say, oh, there's a potential, then I say we hold off.
Yeah.
And we do it post.
Right. Okay,
Sounds good to
we,
me.
we support that
Absolutely.
observation.
Okay, so I'll probably take it off of, off the agenda here until we know what we're gonna do. So I wanna make sure we're keeping thing in the stages or the
Right.
phases we need to.
Yes. Stages and phases, it sounds like life.
Yes, definitely that.
Stages and phases.
Right.
Okay, and now D, building B, education rooms 3 through 6 conversion.
Right, so again, here's another one of those particular challenges where the project grew on its own. Because there are two sets of restrooms involved in that, right? The internal ones in classroom 6, the small little preschool-y like room.
Right.
And the two external restrooms on the outside. I am quite certain that this is gonna trigger a bid process. They're gonna be over $25,000.
Okay.
I had the opportunity to be introduced to a new, much smaller architectural draft firm. Unfortunately, I got introduced to them after this RFP session was closed.
Mhm.
I explained that, it's a small bathroom, it's renovation of 2 bathrooms. It may or may not require permitting to the county,
Mhm.
since most of it is just changing, but there is a potential for some drain. And that's where our contractors are like, I'm not really sure what that's gonna trigger. And I said, well, hold on, let's have that look. So this new firm, the gal said, well, why don't I come out next week? I'll just take a look at it. She says, I'll give you my honest opinion. She says, I understand you're working with other people. She says, but this just gives me a chance to be part of your ongoing conversation.
Mhm.
Great, come on out, give me your feedback. If she indicates, no, you probably don't need to, or yes, you're going to for this section, that's just more information for
Right.
us, right?
Cultivate the resources.
Right.
Yeah.
But once I have a little more knowledge, obviously we'll have a lot of projects going on. There is something to be said for having those rooms being constructed during the same time as the parking lot.
Right.
Because then we're not losing that
Right.
space.
Right.
And right now, as you know, pretty much every dang room at that center is being used throughout the week.
Yeah. Yeah.
So shutting it down has become a bigger deal, but those external restrooms have got to be addressed
Yes,
soon.
they do.
So I'm gonna just kind of follow with this a little bit informally, see what it is with this person. We may decide that we wanna put out another RFP for architects for that space.
Mhm.
And then we would do another bid process for another GC. But I think we would probably end up getting that done in kind of the same timeline as Site Logic, where the one in building A is much larger project.
Yeah.
That's gonna take design a lot longer, it's gonna take permitting a lot longer, so there's a good chance we could get building B done, along a similar timeline as the parking lot.
Mhm.
And then those projects would be done by the time building A really starts to go into any kind of real construction. So that's been the working hypothesis of stages and phases.
Gotcha. All of that sounds logical to me.
It does,
Okay.
not a balls in the air.
Not to take Site Logic's thunder, but it sounded logical. Okay,
Well, that's,
we'll stand by for further information.
Yeah.
Okay,
and that's pretty much anything
lots of
big.
attention going the right place and,
Oh, a Site Logic update, I'm sorry, I forgot, I wanted to mention, we had a conversation with them because that center will be closed. We wanted to make sure they weren't doing construction on this parking lot at the exact same time,
oh yeah,
because that would be
wrong.
so they're able to stagger when that happens without a delay to either one. That way they can have their team there, do all of this.
Yeah.
Then when that's done, have their team come over here and
Okay.
do all of this.
Very good.
So that will keep us, able to function really.
Okay, well, having staggered in my life, I'm glad they're going to stagger purposefully.
Plenty of staggering,
Getting out
no
of
falling
bed is
down.
a staggers, no.
No falling down.
No. Yeah,
Yeah.
no falling down. Okay, any comments or future things?
I come under my risk management hat right now when I put this out there, just to be considered. In the event that there would be some kind of a power problem, failure, IT, electrical, do we have a backup plan on how to keep things moving along?
No.
Just like everybody else.
Yeah,
We
so
throw up the flares.
yeah, there is a follow-up conversation and it's basically kind of a phase 2 to Site Logic. With our strategic planning conversation, really talking about wanting that building or the wellness center, to be able to be a cooling center. The only way that can happen is if we do have some sort of battery generator process to be able to be off the grid and function. So in order for that to happen, we had already essentially gone through the contract with Site Logic when that really became a priority. So once we're a little bit closer to this project being done, they are aware and they are considering in their design our ability to upsize in the future. Hence the shades, the actual structure for the solar will be larger and be able to accommodate more solar panels in the future. They're also going to set it so that the electrical board system hookups panels will be able to accommodate a generator and or battery wall once we decide we want to go there. So it'll eventually be part of the plan, but it has to be definitely a phase 2.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Just to be
These are
considered,
good.
maybe we want to consider, at some point purchasing upon their recommendation, a generator that would be able to support.
Well, and that's what we talked about. The challenge with a generator is then you have to have fuel
Versus a battery wall.
versus a battery wall and our solar. In which case we can own our power on site and we're constantly generating unless it's during a storm, which is not usually when you're gonna need a cooling center.
Right.
So the expectation is, if we need to be a full, completely off the grid triage center, that's a whole nother.
Yeah.
And we're not really designed, located, infrastructure built for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But for a cooling center, we're absolutely a good fit. And that's where the battery wall may be a good option. What's nice is we'll be a year, 2 years from that. The technology's better every single day,
Every single minute,
right?
yeah.
So that has not been forgotten. That has been part of our conversation with Site Logic of hey, don't forget, we plan to go here.
Yeah.
We're not doing this in the initial part of the project. but we
help us be
anticipate.
ready. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. Thank you for that reminder and also the way that you've collaborated or strategized with them.
Hopefully, yeah. I mean, it may come in faster, it just depends. Obviously, there will be a cost to that, and those are still fairly pricey. So we'll have to look to see if there's other funding options, supports.
Yeah,
For that.
I'm just thinking about, as we move forward and we have these operations moving, to progress. In the event that something happens, you'd hate to have everything come to a screaming halt. If there was some way we could, proactively put something in place to help us through that bump.
And I think that we'll have that ability. It's gonna be a little farther out as far as the timeline. We're not gonna be able to open the doors and have it that way. But the fact that we can design and
Yes.
be prepared and know that that's part of that 3 to 5 year plan. So when we do strategic planning again, or to update the plan in next year, that can be something that we can add on to how to investigate, how to build on to, something of that sort.
Okay.
Okay. Roy, anything from your perspective that you'd like to add?
Did we hold up okay drainage wise through all the
Yes.
rains?
Yes,
Fantastic.
we did pretty good.
Real test.
Yeah, we had some areas that clogged, LDC, our landscape folks were able to clear a lot of the leaf litter and such. There's a couple areas at the, basically that north end of the parking lot where the slopes down, where a lot of the pavement has essentially degraded to the point where it's just kind of running through and out the dirt on the backside. That will all be fixed with the new parking lot, and then with those ADA ramps, we'll have to figure out if we have to put in some sort of retaining wall, some sort of foliage planting that will help solidify that. But we didn't really have anything that caused any significant damage. We had no tree issues. We've already handled those, Roy, in the first couple of years we were out there together. So we're not having any of that. We will probably, this is related, but we're gonna talk to LDC to have them bring out their arborist person to take a look at a lot of those oak trees that are backside of the house. A lot of that just needs to be trimmed up and cleaned up, because the goal is still to be able to have our kind of meditation Tai Chi garden space back there. But right now, the trees really are a little overhanging.
Yeah.
But they're oaks, so they need to be treated appropriately.
Yes.
I have a follow-up conversation scheduled with Mission Resource Conservation District. Really easy because they're right in the building. They're happy to come out and help us understand how we can build a more native privacy wall, so that those neighbors that are on that backside, we can put some sort of chain link, which is fine, but not very pretty. But a set of shrubs that can grow back there and can grow tall,
Sure.
that will grow well in the shade, because that area is 100% shade. So we're working with them and LDC to talk about the trees, the leaf litter, and the privacy. And a lot of that is just gonna be more small, ongoing project. It's not really a big project at this point. So I haven't really put it as an agenda item, but that might be some of just the smaller cleanup fix-ups that you'll see out there.
When we, if I may, put this out there, when we move into the construction activities, prior to that, will we have the opportunity to survey the land and looking at the established grade and see if it needs to be corrected to prevent any kind of perhaps natural pond accumulation?
We don't have any natural pond accumulation on the property at all right now. So, other than the main parking area that they're gonna be working on,
Okay,
I think that's the only grade that they'll look at. The only place any water actually kind of accumulates, if you will, where it gets a little bit swampy, is the backside of building A, where we're talking about this new construction anyway. So all of that will have to be part of the geo survey anyway. Yeah,
I just had an unpleasant experience in my past life as a clinic manager in Brea, when General Med created a new medical facility. And it was perfect. It was beautifully done, well established, pointed, looked very attractive. The first rain that we had, you could have floated a boat in there, because it was not, that someone didn't have the foresight to determine where the runoff, where the water was gonna go, and there was not enough drainage to divert that flow. So I remember the parking lot, you know.
Yeah, the parking lot, I'm actually not worried about at all. The only area that would have to stay part of the conversation is that back area of the house. I think Roy, was that 2 years ago we fixed all those drains?
Yes,
It was about 2 years ago?
yeah.
They have worked fine, it's just, you know, a couple of the storms this year, so much rain happened so fast.
Right.
Nothing's
Nothing would
gonna
have
keep
worked.
up.
You just,
Right.
yeah, you just have to make sure that
Right.
they're clear and
Right.
flowing, because.
And LDC has done a great job of making that part of their maintenance, it's just, you know, and then Teresa's out there. And so as she's seen things come up, she's able to call them and make it happen. You know, in the first couple of years when I didn't have staff out there, you know, it's like, hey, Roy, can you take a look out there? You know, we don't bug him hardly anymore now because the fact that staff are there, so you have a lot more eyes
You're just
on the
getting
project.
respite right now, because it's gonna
He's,
move
he's
forward.
still Mr. On Call.
I know.
So God forbid something happened, you know, 2 o'clock in the morning. Roy gets the call.
Go-to guy.
Oh my God.
Call me, I'll do backup for you.
Yeah.
Me and the cat were up at 2 o'clock in the
Yeah.
morning. He sits on the chair and just goes, are you moving?
Cause I'm cat,
Give
I'm
me something to
nocturnal.
eat?
I'm gonna get you.
No,
You
he
moved your
just-
toes, I'm up.
He moves as little as possible, you know, when you're 18, you're like 88.
That's right.
Yeah. And he's like, if you're moving around, would you give me something to eat?
Yeah.
Throw me a bone.
Anything, anything,
Okay,
make me a sandwich.
all right. Any other items for the good of the cause?
Oh, quick question, if I may. Is the umbrella of facilities encompassing anything happening with that building over there?
Absolutely not, that's completely
Oh, that's
separate
him.
entity.
Okay,
He's paying us off in May.
April 30th, actually, I've already, mailed over all of the documents to their title company for final distribution of payments, so.
excellent, yeah.
Yeah, no, we share about half the dirt right there. One of the things that's in the budget for this upcoming fiscal year is to complete tearing out all this ivy and everything along this building and doing something a little more eco-friendly. Again, that's part of our conversation with Mission Resource Conservation District. It has worked so well, that whole hillside
It's
is
very,
completely stable now,
Yeah,
all those plants have grown in well. So when we talk about something over there, we talked about doing something that's more native so that we'll have at least something visually attractive. So you're not just looking at the back of the cinder block building and the mud.
You know, the cypress trees, those long, tall green ones,
We're-
they are. small
We're gonna,
roots, get
we're gonna
tall.
stay very, very, native. There's no irrigation over there.
Mhm.
So it might be more of a grass
Oh.
or maybe a rock set of formation. We don't wanna go all the way in, so we may only have about a foot or so for something small. So I'm just gonna rely on Mission Resource if they have some grant programs where they've been able to help us with things. We haven't really had too much conversation of what that looks like. You'll recall when I first got here, there used to be a set of shrubs that ran there.
Mhm.
sad little shrubs.
Sad little shrubs that we also had a problem with folks camping behind them.
Mhm.
Which was a safety concern for me, so we pulled those out.
Now we're posted too.
Yeah, well, even then, yeah, but,
So you don't have any, direct ideas
There's-
about blocking that building?
no, no. I don't wanna block it entirely, but I think we could do something that's at least visually appealing at the ground to car level, so that when you park up into it, you're not just like, oh, look, there's a bunch of muddy dirt in the back of a building. If we could do some sort of, plant life, it would be more attractive. So, and Mission Resource is all about, finding things that are more, pollinator garden
Yeah,
friendly and
be friendly to the bees.
bees, the butterflies, all of it. You'll see that there's a number of plants showing up in this front area that are very small, and there's some little colored flags. That's all Mission Resource Conservation, that we
Nice.
haven't had to pay, anything to put in.
Get those
that they're managing.
pollinators.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a perfect spot because there's no traffic, like people aren't walking through it.
yeah.
Perfect, let's let it grow and be attractive.
Why not?
Why not?
Okay, friends, I am going to adjourn this meeting at 10:35.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is it just me or is anybody